I'd first like to bring up Bruce VanLoenen and Tucker Boss. Let them introduce themselves, talk a little bit about the area that they manage and that kind of thing. And then we'll dive into some questions. So Bruce, let's start with you. How are you today? How are things going? And tell us a little bit about yourself, if you would.
You bet. Thanks for putting us on here today. Yeah, some of your comments that you made, it is pretty wild. And I think my region, I've got a lot of wildness going on. And speaking of my region, my name's Bruce VanLoenen, and I live in Northwest Kansas, and I take care of Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas. And that state of Texas will create a lot of diversity across that state of what's going on. And, there is a lot going on throughout the whole region right now.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt. And let's dive into that here in a sec. Let's get Tucker introduced. And Tucker, tell us a little bit about yourself, the area you manage, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. My name's Tucker Boss. I've been with FMH for about 14 years. My territory is the far west. That includes Nebraska and any state west of Nebraska, um, primarily Colorado, parts of Wyoming. We have a pretty good presence in Idaho and some in the Pacific Northwest. So again, kind of like Bruce said, kind of wild out there right now. We've got extremes of cold, wet, very dry, so kind of all over the board.
So let's Bruce, let's go back to you just generally with how planting has gone this year. Well, and you're in a unique situation because planting is well over for the fall stuff, right? And we're into
Yeah.
planting for the spring. But can you give us kind of your high level overview of your region?
Yeah, our wheat planting went really, really well last fall. Like you said there, David, it was well past us and that's coming on. But what is so unique about my region with the corn planting that went on, you take the Austin, Texas area to out in northwest Kansas, that down in the Austin, Texas area, we've got corn that is tasseling right now. And our final plant date in Northwest Kansas is May 31st. So we've got corn that's just going in the ground up in the northern parts of my region. And, but the corn planting went very, very well. We did have some issues in southeast Kansas with little too much precipitation once we got the crop in good, but as it was coming out of the ground, we had a lot of precipitation at low spots that flooded it out, terrace channels, things like that we are getting a lot of replants on right now that the guys are trying to address. And as we speak, I think hopefully we can get the tractors back in the field and get some of those low spots corrected this week and maybe get some crop planted back in there. But as far as the rest of the state of Kansas, it's kind of all over the board. Like I said, clear out to the northwest, we're just probably 30% done. A lot of dry land, non-irrigated acres that we'll be really addressing here in the next two to 3 weeks anyway to get those completed. But yeah, the cotton planting down in Texas was going very well until we did get some moisture. And the
Yeah.
Texas area that I'm talking about is over in the Blacklands from that Dallas to Austin area. And, it kind of slowed that process down, but I think we did pretty good. And then, out West Texas, out in the Lubbock area, just getting ready to get started on the cotton planting out there. Um, Conditions right now, I can say probably the first in my 4 to 5 years of managing Texas, the planting conditions are as good as they've been. So we're hoping those producers in West Texas can get going with their cotton this year. And, it's the
Yeah.
outlook right now, it's there.
Yeah.
So
No, that's fantastic. I just did a little miming of knocking on wood. Let's get them
yeah,
conditions going.
right.
Yeah, one follow up quick for Bruce, and I'll throw it over to Tucker. What is, if you had to boil it down to one or two things that you're really keeping your eye on right now? I'm sure you probably mentioned it, but what are things that you're really looking at right now?
Well, as far as the planning, I think everything is going along really well. I think the biggest concern that we are having in the state of Kansas right now is our wheat crop. Over the last couple of weeks, we've had a lot of mosaic show up in the western
Mm,
half of Kansas. And, we've had producers are going out there and they're finding that, it blew in, from volunteer fields around of wheat from that the producers left out in 2024 in the fall, and the volunteer crop came, and that mosaic blew over into the 2025 crop. Or we were even finding some of it where it came out of ditches along the
Mm,
roadway that have extended out into the crop. So we have some adjusters going around and, meeting with our insureds to, give them their, appraisals to see maybe what that wheat crop might do or what its potential is. And it's kind of all over the board. We've taken out some fields. We've had guys go in and spray them to just stop the mosaic. And then there's fields that it's just a portion of it where it hasn't taken the whole field. So yeah,
mm.
that one's been a very strong concern for us as of right now.
Yeah, definitely. I can see why. Tucker, general conditions out your way. I mean, what are some of the things you're looking at related to planning, related to some generalities that you're seeing kind of throughout your region?
Yeah, starting in Nebraska, I would say planning progress is well ahead of schedule. I mean, we haven't gotten measurable rain, really anything over a quarter inch for a month. So, wet weather has not been an excuse by any stretch. Um, as far as, staying in that Nebraska area, we are starting to get some concerns on replants. We've had soybeans that have, sprouted, but now there's no moisture for them to tap into. So they're starting to die. So that's a huge concern. We've got, some chances of rain here over the next week, but nothing real promising. And on some of that stuff, it's probably going to be too late. Um, in central Nebraska, again, planting progress is great. The wheat out there looks amazing. Um, the best it has in quite a few years. We are starting to see some of that mosaic that Bruce is pushing up
Mm-hmm.
our way. We'll just blame that on Bruce, I guess. I think for the most part, people are going to leave that alone. There's been talk of people tearing some up, but I don't think we have the mosaic nearly as bad as Kansas does at this point in time. Out west in the Panhandle, kind of a different bird out there, different
Yes,
crops,
sir.
different
Yeah.
weather patterns. It's dry. We've had wheat blown out. We've started to do some wheat appraisals where guys wanted to work the ground to keep it from blowing. Same story goes with eastern Colorado. They did get some timely rains out there last week when we were up in Wisconsin, so hopefully that carries them a little bit farther. Um, Another concern is the San Luis Valley
Mm.
in south central Colorado. We're going to be looking at some PP out there. They just didn't have the snowpack that they normally have. So PP is definitely going to be an area of concern out there. And then you've got Idaho. I would say our biggest concerns out there would be wheat that just failed over the winter, and then sugar beet replants. It's been cold out there,
Mm.
cold, cold. So those sugar beets do not like that once they start poking out of the ground, and they get nipped pretty easy. We're looking at some replants on those. So kind of all over the board there, but that's kind of a general summary of the area.
Yeah, no, no, it's super helpful because, and just by definition, your region is, all over or part over the border, right? You've got from Idaho down to Nebraska, Colorado,
Yeah,
and areas between. So it would make sense that there'd be kind of some variance there. And it
yep,
sounds like, rather than just one thing, you're keeping your eye on, multiple factors depending on the geography. So,
for sure.
so super helpful. Hey, let me ask both you guys, and then I want to bring on our next guest here. Um, what are the most important things, not necessarily that you're looking at, although I bet it'll be similar, that farmers and agents need to know right now? I mean, any advice you can give folks in your regions of the country that they should keep their eye on?
Yeah, I'll go first so Bruce doesn't steal my thunder.
There you go.
I would make sure that, as a producer, you don't go out there and do anything until speaking with your agent. Um, it seems like every year we get a situation where, 2 weeks later we have an insured that says, "Oh, I already replanted that. I replanted that 2 weeks ago, or I tore that wheat field up 2 weeks ago." We need to be out there prior to destruction, prior to replant. So that would be the biggest thing that I would stress is to make sure to keep agents informed of your intentions.
Gotcha. Very helpful. Thanks, Mr. VanLoenen.
Yeah, I would echo what Tucker's saying there. I think the biggest thing is that communication between the insured, the agent, even with our adjuster is, hey, make sure before you go tearing up that crop, just to make sure the communications have all been made. And I guess one plug I would put in is we start approaching, because like down in Texas, I think here within the next 2 weeks, we'll probably start cutting some wheat down there. And I think one of the biggest things is, insureds to keep good records on their production of their crop, how they're storing it. And, if they need some bins measured, get those claims turned in. But, that's going to be coming. So, between planting and harvest,
Yeah.
we're looking right square in the eye of a lot of things getting ready to come off in this region.
Yes, sir. All right, perfect. Well, thanks, you guys. Thanks for breaking the ice, being the first guest. Thanks for a great job, and really appreciate your time. It's super helpful information.